let's take some time to talk about visibility in Twingate, and we're going to explore two areas of visibility in Twingate. The second one is the Administrator Actions Reports, which is the audit trail of the administration console of Twingate and reports on every update, every change that is carried out in the admin console by administrators of Twingate. There's a couple of ways you can retrieve the reports. You can retrieve it from the admin console, but you can also sync it to an S3 bucket. So we'll explore that, but we're going to start first with network events. A network event really represents any connection to any resource from any user that's on Twingate. That's what a network event is in Twingate. So it reflects your user's activity on your Twingate network as a whole. And there's a few things to review here. There's where you can access the network events, what the network events contain, and we are going to start with that. So the network events really, if you think about the structure, regardless of where you access the network events from, the structure itself is always the same. If you take a look at the admin console, you're going to see a few things in the admin console, such as the actual resource that is served by a connection request. You're going to see the actual fully qualified domain name or IP that is going to be connected to. That is different from the resource definition in some cases, right? If you have a resource that is a wildcard resource, then the fully qualified domain name that is being connected to would be narrower by definition than the wildcard resource. So you'll see both in every network event. You will see the routing information, that is which remote network and which connector are serving the connection for that particular user to that particular resource. You will see whether the connection is a relay connection or peer-to-peer connection. You will see information that pertains to the user and their device, so the name of the device, an ID of the user via their email, the public IP of the client that the user is connecting from. You'll also see the protocol and port that the user is connecting to, the duration of the connection, and obviously the status of the connection itself, which makes it a good, so in the admin console view here, makes it is a good candidate for troubleshooting because you will literally see everything that needs to happen for a connection to get established. So in this case, Arthur is requesting a connection to this endpoint and doing so via this public IP over TCP over port 443, so likely HTTPS. The connection is going through the relay. The connector is actually behind the firewall, is receiving Arthur's connection requests. It looks like the connector is also able to resolve self.events.data.microsoft.com and then patching through to that endpoint. And so the event itself and the connection was established properly. But it's not always the case. If you have a DNS lookup issue or a routing issue, you will see it in red here and the event will be marked as failed. So the admin console schema, or the admin console view of this that we've actually covered in the past, is a very convenient thing to do that kind of troubleshooting. And as a reminder, you can see those events in multiple places in the admin console. In the overview tab, you will see all events for all users across all resources. So as I said, you will see failed events. This is a routing issue or a connector cannot reach this IP address. You can also see it from resources directly. If I pick any of my resources, like this one, I will see all of the events for the resource itself. And like I said, the resource definition and the destination are always the same. My resource is a wildcard.console and so on, but I'm connecting myself to US-West-1. So you see the full details here. So you can access that from the perspective of resources, and you can then also do the same from individual users. So if I want to take a look at what Alex has been connecting to, I can take a look at all of the resources that were accessed by this particular user. So this is the main troubleshooting way to see network events in Twingate in the admin console. Know that the records here are not real time, they're near real time. The connection needs to have closed in some way for it to reflect here, so sometimes it can take a couple of minutes. Just be mindful of that if you start doing troubleshooting from this particular view. Now, again, right, the actual, oops, went a little too far. The actual schema is the same regardless of where you're pulling the data from. Now, we saw what it looks like for the admin console. We're going to go and take a look at what else is available and where else are those network events available in the interface. So the second place in the admin console that you can retrieve those events is by going to reports and going to network events reports. So when you generate a network events report, it's going to pull together all network events across possibly all of your remote networks, although you can, if you're doing some troubleshooting for a given remote network, you have the ability to extract the reports for a specific remote network. You're going to specify the start and end dates for the reports. We store a year and a month worth of data. So you should be able to pull all of your network events for the past year and a month. If you click on generate report, it's async. It's going to generate the report for you and send you an email when it's ready to download. When you download the report itself, it's going to give you a gzip file that you can unpack and open with something like a text editor, for instance, or let me see, but I think it is something you can open with something like Excel. Let's take a closer look at that. Yeah, there you go, actually. So, all right, so the network reports from the admin console is the network report that gets exported as a CSV file, so comma separated value file. And the same exact information is available as what you saw in the admin console, including actually the bytes transferred and received. I don't know that it's, I think it is there actually in the admin console as well, but every single event is also referenced here. And so that's actually a really good tool if you're trying to draw statistics, user statistics from your various resources, who's connecting to what resources tend to create like stuff like DNS errors and things like that. That's a really good report to have. We have some tooling that allows you to turn this CSV into other formats, especially if you're doing data science projects. We can turn this into a data frame and have some tooling we can share with you. So don't hesitate to contact your account team if that's something that you'd like to do. Now, this is a report, obviously, that you generate yourself. So you're not able currently to export this report automatically to something like S3, although it is planned. But if you were to want to extract all of the data from every single event into a monitoring tool or a log aggregator like Datadog, for instance, you can still do that today. What you need to do is you actually need to configure your the documentation is available here. So if you go to this link, you will see how you can use journald or syslog to send the connector logs, the real-time connector logs, to your SIEM. That's possible. And this is they're all JSON formatted. Every event is JSON formatted. Again, it's the same exact data that you see in the CSV file or the admin console. It's just formatted in JSON. And so you can ingest this into something like Datadog, like any SIEM or log aggregator, to process those logs real time. Let's take a look actually on one of our connectors. What you need to do if you want to activate those logs is you need to make sure that your connectors are going to have this Twingate log analytics set to V2. The difference between V1 and V2 is that V2 reports network events for service accounts. I don't believe V1 does. So just make sure you have that there. And if you have Twingate log analytics set to V2 into the configuration file of your connector for each connector, then your connector is going to start producing events. And we'll take a look at what that looks like if you ingest all of those events into a SIEM, but I'll show you the command that you can use on the operating system where the connector resides to pull those events. Okay, so this is a good example. You can use journalctl to pull the Twingate connector journal D records for the past, like in this case, 2000 minutes. Note the analytics, the network events in the Twingate connector are bundled with the connector logs, and so that's why I'm using a little grep here to only extract all of the lines that are marked as analytics, which indicates a network event, and doing a little bit of cleanup of each string to just have the JSON formatted string for each network record. So if I run this command on the host for one of my connectors, it's basically returning multiple lines. Each line is a network event with the same exact information that you saw actually right here. This is the same exact data. Now, you wouldn't necessarily want to process those yourself on the connectors directly, because if you have dozens or 100+ connectors, you're not going to go into each host and look at network events individually. But that's when you should configure your connectors to ingest those analytics logs into a log aggregator and give us something like this dashboard actually. Let's take a look at what it looks like. So this is a dashboard that is available out of the box if you have Zendesk, but the same dashboard could be replicated in any number of log aggregators because the underlying data is exactly the same. It ingests every network event from every connector in our test environment and reports on everything that we've spoken about. So what is being connected to, what resource definition is catching the event type, the port information, how much is going through, the protocol, public IP of the client, some geolocation information. Actually, if we take a look here, every event is augmented with some geolocation based on the public IP of the client. You can extract high-level trends as well. There's lots of stuff that you like, most used resources and most things connected to. There's lots you can derive from those network event logs if you ingest them into a SIEM, essentially. And this dashboard, by the way, is available, I believe, for free. Okay, and so again, right, all of those things are available in the admin console through various views that we've already covered together earlier. Now, let's move on to the second thing that brings a little bit of visibility into Twingate in the form of the admin actions reports. So again, the admin actions report reports on every change that was carried out by a person with the right permissions in the Twingate admin console. So think anything that gets deleted, everything that gets configured, everything that gets updated, everything that gets created, every relation that gets created between two different entities, like a resource being attached to a group, all of that ends up in the admin actions reports. And so the admin actions reports always consists of the same thing, right? One line corresponds to one action. Every line always identifies an action. Delete, edit, create, or remove or add relation. Remove or add relations is exactly what I just explained. It's when you add a resource to a group or add a policy to a resource. Each action always identifies the user in the actor field and the timestamp the change so that you can trace back to changes in your environment to the actor and when the change was carried out. And finally, every action always identifies targets. So there's either one target per event or there's two targets per event. There's one target per event if the event is of type create or delete, and the target is what's being created or what's being deleted. There's two targets for edit, add relation, and remove relation, because for edit, add relation, and remove relation, there's always sort of a before and after objects. If you're going to edit an object, there's a definition prior to the editing of the object and a definition of the object after that. And that's what the targets are. The first target is going to be what the object used to look like, and the second target is going to be what it's been modified to. That's what those are. This is a perfect example. It's all JSON formatted of an event, in this case, Grady attached a resource to a remote network. So the first target is the resource definition being attached, and the second target is a remote network that the resource is being attached to. And there's really two places in the interface where you can retrieve those admin actions. I don't know if it's actually covered. Oh, it's actually covered at the beginning here. The first one is if you go back to the same reports tab here and go to audit logs, you can generate an audit log reports for different types of objects. So here we're going to do all categories, and we're going to do few months back at least. So same as the network event logs, it's going to process, and then after a while it's going to send you an email when it's ready, although you can always refresh the page and take a look at when it gets generated. The second option you have is to actually sync your audit logs to S3 so that I think it's done every 5 minutes, there's a sync, so that in your S3 bucket, you'll have a file every 5 minutes reporting on all of the new entries in the admin actions. Let's take another look at this. It's now available, and if I download this report, same, it arrives as a gzip, and if I open it with something like a text editor, it looks like this. So every line is an admin action, and it's in JSON format, as mentioned before. And it's exactly the same format if you go through S3, by the way, but the S3 integration makes it maybe easier to integrate into some other monitoring system if you want to do that. And that concludes our discussion on monitoring and visibility.